All right, so welcome to the Dawson podcast. I'm excited to be talking to everybody, and it's interesting. I've been on the road for the last couple weeks and just got back home, and one of the things last week I was with a very successful group of people, and we had an opportunity to go around the room and talk about kind of the biggest mistakes we had made in business. And so I had talked about my biggest mistake in business thus far, and I've had quite a few doozies. So this topped them, and this particular mistake cost me personally over $8 million. So I'm going to title this podcast "My $8 Million Mistake," because I don't want anybody else to make these mistakes. To give you a little color on this, I started a dental management company, and although the indicators for the business were somewhat sloppy, like not good access to technology, very fragmented and inconsistent methodologies of operation, I believed that we could overcome that, and I still believe if we ever could have got the data right, and that's one of my mistakes is and I'll get to that, is being overly dependent on third-party people. But basically, I'll summarize these mistakes in order, and then I'll talk about them a little bit. So this is my $8 million mistake. The first mistake is what I titled the entrepreneurial trap. And what is the entrepreneurial trap? Well, and by the way, these are my definitions. These are my notes. These are the things that after I left that conversation, I thought I would write down so I would never repeat these mistakes again. My entrepreneurial trap was assuming that others believe and care about what inspires you as the owner. So assuming other people believe or care about what inspires you. So whatever your mission is, whatever your passion is, making the assumption that people are going to be inspired by the same things is a huge mistake. And I'll get into why. The other trap is the employee trap. When employees assume that they're entitled just because they show up and go to work. I think that's what I call the employee trap. The hierarchical trap. Assuming just because you have a title or a position in an organization, other people should listen to you. That's another trap. The leadership trap. Assuming because you're the leader, others should follow. And then the follower trap. Assuming you're the follower, so you sit around and wait for other people to lead. Now, when you put all those traps together and you get them all working together as levers, that's how you lose $8 million. You see, as the entrepreneur or the leader or the person that's in hierarchical power, you have to learn something that shouldn't cost you $8 million. And in my mind, what I had to learn, and in some ways I had to learn over again, because these were things I recognized in my first business. But when you get so busy doing the business and you're trying to scale and then go to scaling by bringing so many people into the environment and releasing them to do their job, and then hiring leadership, and you're doing it so fast. That's how I lost the $8 million. I didn't go back to the principles of how I founded my second company. I actually tried to do it bigger, better, faster. And there was some intertwined issues here operationally. But the biggest one is the things that I can take accountability for is just because I was excited about the business concept and just because I was excited about the mission of the organization, I assumed that excitement would empower and propel other people, inspire them to care as much as I cared. And that was a huge mistake on my part. Now, the good news is there's a way to fix that. And that's, I sometimes think about the 8 million I lost, and I think, was that the best education I've ever had? I mean, in one business I'm making 150 million, and in the other business I lost 8 million. And it was happening somewhat simultaneously. One, I grew slowly and systematically. The other, I tried to grow overnight. And so thinking that just because I was excited and passionate about the opportunity, everyone would rally behind that, was a mistake. And so I'm telling you, don't make that mistake. If you're passionate and you love your business, you need to find ways to tie into the teams of people that you're interdependent on. And you need to engage them in a way where they can pursue their passion in your business while you pursue your passion. And so making sure that you align your team with the business is important. As far as the employee trap, employees assuming that they're entitled just because they show up. How do you break through that? Well, guess what? It's the same trap the entrepreneur has. If you want employees to be giving it their best, giving it their all, and Gallup poll came out and said that basically 2/3 of the people are disengaged or actively disengaged in their last survey in the workforce. And that's really problematic if you're the business owner. But how do you bridge that? How do you make sure that you align your employees with the highest valued contribution in the organization and inspire them to give it everything they have? Well, if you've created a culture where employees feel like they're working hard, so they should just be rewarded, instead of creating a culture where they're aligned with the success of the organization and they're part of the organizational success and they need to reach above and beyond just showing up, making sure that you have a structure in place and you can create the natural filters in your organization for those that want to excel and those that want to grow, understand clearly and concisely how they need to do that, and not creating a culture where just because people are showing up, they feel entitled. And then the hierarchical trap. I had to hire a lot of managers and put them in charge. This was different than my previous business where I grew my leadership team over long periods of time. This was an attempt to go and find outsiders in all the different areas and functional areas of the business and bring them in and get them to work together cohesively, and be culturally aligned with how you see and want the business to work. And it's really hard to hire one great executive and bring them into an organization. But when you have to go hire 3, 4, or 5 executives at different positions, get them to all work together culturally, operationally, and drive value in the organization, it's highly problematic. And unfortunately, for those employees that are trying to excel, it can create a trap for them. The hierarchy trap is problematic because sometimes people you put in charge of positions are a little bit afraid of the up-and-comers, the future leaders, and so they push down on them and oppress them, and then sometimes you lose your good people. So make sure if you have somebody in charge, they're aligned with the culture of the organization, they're aligned with the direction of the organization, and they're aligned with the inspiration of the founder or of the business owner. And making sure that you've done everything you can to tie in their personal, professional, financial goals with the organization, and that they understand their job in a hierarchical position is to find, inspire, and lead people to execute at the highest level, not to waste everyone's time trying to play power roles or power positions within the organization. And I see analysis or paralysis by analysis when you put too many hierarchical leaders in a room together and they're all pontificating or positioning for control and power. It really will kill your organization. And then the leadership trap, assuming you're the leader and others should follow. Look, the number one job of leaders is to inspire, develop, hold accountable team members to drive them to success organizationally. And the way you do that is by understanding what aligns with those individuals personally, professionally, financially, and showing them how to accomplish that through the business. And when you're building really super fast and you're throwing a lot of people in the system, it's easy to forget that. And when you're hiring experienced people who come out of corporate positions, who got the jobs because they have a technical experience or they have a duration, they have time in a particular area and a certain level of experience in that area, doesn't necessarily translate to a synergized approach at developing team members and aligning them with the business. They carry in their old way of thinking, their old way of doing, and when the more of the hierarchical people you put in position, the more chaos you can actually create in your organization. So I'm going to talk about this. And then the follower trap, assuming you're the follower, so I'll wait for a leader. So in the context of an employee, the entitlement trap, just because you're paying me and I show up, you should pay me more and you should treat me well. Although I agree you should be treated well, I don't necessarily agree because you're just showing up, you should be paid or paid more. The follower, if you're an employee follower, what I learned through this experience is you have so much opportunity to excel. You know, some of our absolute best people in that system survive hierarchical leaders who I brought in and then had to get out of the system because they weren't actually complementing. They were more positioning themselves and managing the way they would want to manage without doing it in a way that's consistent with where I wanted the organization to go. So I'm the entrepreneur. I assume we're aligned. We're not aligned. Huge mistake. I'm bringing in experienced people who aren't inspired by the things I'm inspired by. And in some case, I was inspired by taking people who are in business for themselves and helping them significantly impact their business. Some of these people I brought in were more inspired to be the boss or to be in charge. And that was inconsistent with how I believe you lead people. You lead people by inspiring them, by challenging them, by putting them in positions to succeed and then helping and guide them to that success. And then making sure that they're aligned with that success emotionally and financially. The reason I'm bringing this up, my $8 million mistake, is because I went about it the wrong way. And if and when I do it again, there's a few specific things I would do differently. First and foremost, I would build the compensation of my leaders based on how many people they actually develop and accomplish the goals that we've established for them. I wouldn't pay them a big fat salary just for showing up and having a title. I would literally challenge people I bring into an organization that I'm trying to scale, and this is how I'm going to do it going forward. And I'd say your job and your compensation is going to be based on how many people that you help find, develop, and retain to accomplish their personal, professional, and financial goals through the work that they're doing, consistent with the benefit it brings to the organization or the people the organization serves. And I think about all the new business opportunities I look at on a regular basis, learning these pitfalls or these assumptions or these traps and having them as natural filters now as I go into other organizations and I can see things more clearly because I firsthand experienced this in my own organization, and it cost me enough money that it drew my attention into it, which then allowed me to learn what those traps look like. And it taught me how to feel when those traps are present. And what's ironic is as I move into different environments, other people's businesses, or even in my own business that I run, or in the businesses we serve, I can immediately sense these traps. And the way they come out, the way I see them and hear them, is purely by how people communicate in those environments. You can instantaneously, it's like it created a sixth sense for me. And what I'll tell you is the reason I'm being vulnerable and explaining that with all the experience and success I've had, I had an $8 million mistake by falling into these same traps. And it's only in self-reflection and in breaking down, going backwards, the things that caused the things that caused me to lose the money, breaking those down and dissecting them, and then thinking about what choices I made and then how I handled things after that. That caused me to have clarity and understanding that these traps exist all day long in all environments. And I'm sharing them with you because I don't want anybody that I work with who is listening to me to repeat or fall into those traps. Or if you've already got a successful enterprise or organization, but you're finding struggle, it's my goal to bring some of these things to the forefront of your mind so that you can learn these filters and ask yourself the question, if my job is to lead, am I doing it by inspiring and aligning and creating confidence in the people that are working with me? And if you're the employee, are you coming into the position thinking, hey, it's my job and I'm going to do it and I'm entitled to it? Or are you coming into the position saying, I am going to grow myself, I'm going to contribute to the organization beyond their expectations of me? And I think back to some of the most successful leaders that I developed in my previous business, Audigy. These were the people that I'd drive by the building on a Saturday or Sunday night and they'd be in there working. And I'd say to them on a Monday, what were you doing here this weekend? And they'd say, well, the member needed me, or I was training one of my teammates because we need to get better at what we're doing, or I had extra work to do and I felt like coming in and getting it prepared so that we could hit some extra deadlines. Like that self-generated responsibility and dedication to what you're doing. If you're working in a business and you don't have that, you're probably working as a mediocre, an average, or maybe even a disengaged employee. Not maybe actively disengaged, but if you're not actively engaged, which is how can I drive incremental value? How can I show beyond what you're paying me how I can help the organization? How do I contribute the organization bigger, better, and faster? Those are the kind of questions that you would be asking yourself unless you're in the employee trap, which is assuming because you're showing up and they're paying you, you're doing your job. I would really encourage employees, just like I would leaders and entrepreneurs, to be thinking outside of yourself. Think in the bigger context of where value can be created, because here are some lessons learned by wasting $8 million. Now, I'm going to say that there were big data issues. I was reliant on third-party businesses that did not fulfill their contractual obligations, so it impeded my ability to do the things that we were investing in. Yeah, I was a victim by business decisions that I still made that ended up being bad decisions, and I have to live with those decisions, and those are fundamental business decisions that we can talk about in a different time, which is operationalizing and synergizing an organization for scaling. It was the greatest lesson I learned. It was worth the $8 million. And I wanted to share that with you because it was on the forefront of my mind, because we were just talking about it last week. And I think it's valuable to take information as it comes to me and share it with you and make sure that you guys have transparency into how I think, the successes I've had, the failures I've had, so you don't repeat them, you don't duplicate them, and you go out and win every day with massive action and huge impact. Thanks for listening to The B. Dawson Show.